Welcome to Hello Tangent, the podcast where we talk about TV, video game, movies, comics, and desperately try to stay on topic. I am your host, Clark, aka the Reverend Michael Snakebite, and I've got a very special guest on this week. Dennis is here.
Hello.
Hello, Dennis has been on the show before, but it's been a while.
Like the first couple episodes.
Yep. Uh, but yeah, he's back to talk Star Wars, and I think this is actually when I first started this podcast, that was like one of the things we talked about originally we wanted to do is like talk about Star Wars, and it took a year to get here.
Yeah, I think it was actually in the description. I think we put it off because of the because they were bringing out the Skywalker and
I guess it would have been right when Rise of Skywalker was coming out, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we put it off until after that. That way we could kind of go over all of them instead of just cutting out the one at the end.
Yeah, and then it just ended up being a year of trials to get the sound right and to
Yeah.
get an audience and
it took you a year to actually get the Mandalorian.
yeah, and to watch
To watch it.
Mandalorian since
So-
I've just finally done that. Which I guess there will be an episode. I'll have to do an extra episode at the end of this series dedicated to the TV shows. I guess Star Wars TV.
Well, you need a whole episode just for the Mandalorian
I know,
because of
seriously.
everything that they brought in from from canon. I mean, just from
Oh yeah.
everything from the movies to cartoons, books, everything.
Yeah.
They brought in a whole bunch of stuff.
How it connects to Rebels and other
Mhm.
shows, which I've got one person already who's said that they wanted to come in and do the Clone Wars TV show episode with me, which I have no clue how I'm going to break that up. But this is part 5 of my favorite Star Wars, which if those who are just now tuning in have not listened to the previous episodes, it's not necessary because we are doing them out of order. I've completely picked the movies at random. I didn't want to go straight through them canonically or chronologically because I was afraid that would influence what I thought about each individual movie. So we figured we'd just pick them at random, and I've had a guest on every time to examine this movie with me in depth and see where it ranks in my favorite Star Wars movie. And today, I'm very excited to actually talk about this one because we are finally tackling The Empire Strikes Back. And when I first started this series, I sent texts out to everyone that I knew would have been guests to come on and talk. And you were, I think, one of the first ones I texted, and I said, "Which Star Wars do you want?" And you immediately responded with Empire Strikes Back. And for me, coming into this, I would have said that Empire probably is my favorite Star Wars movie. And I think generally most Star Wars fans agree that it is probably the best cinematic movie, I guess, shot, dialogue or script, score, acted. I think generally most people consider this to be the best Star Wars movie. Would you agree?
Yeah. Well, also it plays into effect that whenever it was written as one long movie. It had to be broken up into the original 3, but I mean it makes it the whole argument of, oh, the sequel is always better or the prequel, it doesn't apply here because I mean they're all three of them are they link together so well, so it's kind of really tough to pick because they are one huge movie.
And there's supposed to be more because I don't know if you've listened to the Return of the Jedi episode I did with Garrett, but Garrett actually brought up that there was supposed to be a 4th movie, and it was going to be following Boba Fett right after Empire and leading into Return. And that I'd never heard of before. So that's...
Well, he was never even supposed to play a big part.
Yeah,
I mean, he just a person with one line and it dies.
Mhm.
You don't think anything of it that he wasn't going to be such a beloved character.
Yeah, and just so cool, people couldn't help it.
Yeah, like it's because of the community and how they fell in love with Boba Fett that we have the Mandalorian. The backstory of the Mandalore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just
because of Boba Fett. It's just weird how one little instance can. I mean, there's people in the movies who've had more screen time, more dialogue, and they just you couldn't name them.
Yeah. I still know who Lobot is. Speaking of someone who is in Empire Strikes Back, Lobot is in Empire Strikes Back.
Well, it's weird because it's it's the Star Wars universe. Every little person, no matter how big screen time they have, if they're sitting at a console in the back somewhere, they have a name.
Mhm.
Somewhere in the Star Wars universe, they've been named.
Yep.
With the exception of one.
Who's that?
I forgot who it was, but he didn't have a name. He was the one that was destroyed while he was on the hologram thing, Darth Vader.
Oh,
The one that they destroyed the fleet,
hmm
and he didn't have a name.
So he doesn't. Yeah, he didn't get a novel about him.
No, maybe they'll do it from the other side.
Yeah.
It's like they did that with a what was it? Can't remember now, but they did. I forgot what the name of the novel was, but it was from the Empire side of chasing down the Millennium Falcon.
hmm
They did it from the TIE fighter captains and all this stuff from that point of view, and instead of just the rebel side. And
Yeah.
so I mean, it was interesting. That's
Yeah.
where you get a lot of that backstory. So
I think the Empire side makes for interesting novels. I like a lot of those. I can't. What was that one that came out just a few years ago? It got a lot of praise. It's the cover had like the bloody stormtrooper helmet hanging on the hook.
I know what you're talking about. but
Yeah,
I
and
can't-
it was about like a whole stormtrooper squad that went into some like dangerous planet, and there's like these crazy cannibal like
Mhm.
creatures in there. But I really wanted to read that, and never did. But so how we do this is normally I start out just by asking what your first experience with Empire Strikes Back was. Do you remember the first time you ever watched it?
No. I've watched that thing 5,000 times. I mean, I was a kid. I mean, it came out late 70s, early 80s.
I think it came out in
Empire
80s.
was the 80s, but I think it was like 79 or something for the first Star Wars. But yeah, I was born in 84, so I mean, I was little whenever I saw it the first time. And I think that's where my love and infatuation with sci-fi, like to this day, I look at, I follow NASA, I'm following the rover.
hmm
I mean, if it's space, I'm intrigued. And I think a lot of that has to do with, Star Wars being my first, jump into sci-fi. And
Yeah.
then, I never really got into Star Trek, but as I got older, I kind of did because I separated the two. And, those two cultures, it's like, yeah, no, Star Wars, Star Trek, Star Wars, you can love them both.
Yeah. I personally never got into. I tried to watch Star Trek when I was younger, didn't really get into it, and then I kind of appreciated it when, like, really when I saw. We're getting way off topic here, but when I
that's
saw,
fine.
oh gosh, First Contact, with the Next Generation crew, that was
Yeah.
I love that movie still to this day. But yeah, don't want to get too sidetracked here. My first memory of Empire Strikes Back was when actually I have the VHS right over there in the background. Special edition trilogy on VHS. I got it for Christmas when it came out, and I had seen A New Hope special edition in theaters when they re-released it in theaters, and that's what got me hooked into Star Wars. And then I got the trilogy for Christmas that year, and I just powered through it on repeat. Just kept watching the movies over and over and over again while I was playing with my toys and stuff. And that's really my first experience to Empire. There it is. Yeah, Death Troopers.
Hanging on the meat hooks.
I
You
want-
know that Empire Strikes Back was the first one to have an episode number on the crawl.
That's true because they didn't know A New
It
Hope
wasn't
was
even
gonna
A
be
New Hope wasn't even named A New Hope. It was just released as Star Wars, and
Mhm.
then when they re-released it, they put
Episode
episode,
4, yep.
and but yeah, it was kind of interesting.
And still on AFI's top 100 films of all times list, Star Wars is just listed as Star Wars, not A New Hope, because that's really, I guess, just an in-canon fandom thing now that, as far as the Film Institute is considered, it's just Star Wars. All right, so how we do this is I pretty much read off a couple of facts about the movie, and then we get into the plot and kind of just go through it and break it down and give our commentary.
Wait a minute. There was a plot.
There was a plot to this movie. It's a plot, an overarching, and it was masterminded by George Lucas, and he knew every detail on how it was going to end.
Yeah.
Everything, yeah. It definitely did not make any amendments or changes or have any help at all. So here are the facts. Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, came out in 1980. It is directed by Irving Kershner, which was not George Lucas. A lot of people still think George Lucas actually directed all the movies, and yeah, definitely did not.
It's his creation, but I mean, that's even today. You have writers and you have
hmm And the writers on this movie were Lee Brackett, Lawrence Kasdan, again, who obviously is a regular in the Star Wars, I guess you'd say, filmography. And then it obviously stars Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Billy D. Williams. Cool as the other side of the pillow.
Wait a minute. Nobody told me Harrison Ford was in this movie.
Yeah. So you're going to back out now?
Spoiler alert. I mean, God.
And of course, the rest of the cast with Peter Mayhew, Kenny Baker, David Prowse, Frank Oz, your goodie. Oh, Alec Guinness returning.
Bullitt?
Jeremy Bullock as the first Boba Fett we will see, and definitely will not remain the look of Boba Fett. He will change drastically.
Hey,
He actually doesn't look too far off in Mandalorian, but he doesn't look anything like young Boba Fett.
I mean, gonna gain some weight. He's getting older, you know.
So, the plot of this movie, obviously, we pick up not too long after the first Death Star has been destroyed, and the rebels apparently are on the run again, and the Empire has rallied, and they are chasing them through space. And we open with a Star Destroyer sending out probes across the galaxy to find said rebels. And we finally see one crash on our first planet. We see Hoth.
You know, that intro was the first time you hear the Imperial Death March.
You do hear Imperial
Very,
March for
very
the first
faint,
time.
but it's there.
Yep. We will hear probably my favorite Star Wars song, the Imperial March, makes its first appearance here. But we see Hoth, and we see Mark Hamill playing Luke Skywalker, obviously riding a Tauntaun, which is the native like two-legged horse camel thing that they use to ride on Hoth. I guess it's native to Hoth, I'm assuming.
His name was Maurice, right? Or was that Robot Chicken?
That might be, or it could have been from the Blue Harvesting. Who knows? I don't know. Do they actually ever say? I don't know in canon if Tauntauns are supposed to be native to Hoth or not.
I don't think they ever.
I don't think they can, because if one frees to death that easy,
it froze pretty quick.
Yeah, if he froze to death, I don't think they could be native to that planet. So yeah, we see Hoth, the inhospitable ice snow planet that the rebels have built a base on and are hiding out in, and we see a crash probe droid that Luke Skywalker is going to go check out. And when he goes to check out, he gets blindsided by another native creature. I guess our first native creature to the planet, the Wampa. And this entire scene that plays out, obviously he gets hit in the face, his Tauntaun gets killed, and then he wakes up in a cave, frozen, hanging upside down, and the Wampa is eating the Tauntaun. And this entire scene was written because Mark Hamill got into a car accident between episodes 4 and 5.
Yeah, they wanted to be able to explain the facial surgery he had.
He has a very noticeable scar in his face, and they wrote this entire scene in to explain why his face is all jacked up, because he had to have reconstructive surgery.
Yep.
So I think he wrecked a Corvette or something.
I don't know. It was like to make it more interesting. It happened to be in the winter. It was like an icy road or something that he wrecked on. I was like, yeah, but I just remember them talking about having that reconstructive surgery, and instead of putting off filming, they just covered him with fake blood and hung him upside down. You know?
Yeah, they used the camera tricks early. Like when you first see him in the movie, they hide that side of his face. Yep. So you can't really tell. I really tried to look when I rewatched it last night. I was like, I'm really going to try to see if I can see the scar before the Wampa hits him. And you can kind of make it out, but it looks like they have covered it up with makeup or something.
Oh, yeah. It looked like it was caked on just to kind of...
So he wakes up, and we get to see him use the Force for the first time, actually using the Force to like force pull something. So he uses the Force in episode 4 to guide the proton torpedoes in the Death Star, or I guess feel it out as far as targeting. Oh. This is the first time we actually see Luke Skywalker use Force powers. And he gets his lightsaber and whacks the arm off the Wampa and escapes. At the same time, now Han Solo who we see flirting incessantly with Princess Leia while he's trying to fix the Millennium Falcon. He decides to go back out to find Luke.
Well, did you see how they made him the Force pull the lightsaber?
How it was done?
Yeah.
Nuh-uh.
He threw it, and then they reversed it.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I didn't think that was that simple, but yeah, I saw the behind the scenes of that one, and it had him throw it, and then they just reversed that whole thing, and he had it.
That's simple but effective.
Yeah, I mean, don't overthink it.
I mean, that's how TikTok tricks nowadays. That's how it's done. So Han goes back out to find Luke. He finds him. The Tauntaun, we said, freezes to death. So Han cuts open the Tauntaun and stuffs Luke inside it. And also, this is a fun trivia fact. This is the only time in the original trilogy that you see a non-Jedi use a lightsaber.
Well, Han?
Yeah, Han.
Oh, yeah. He's the only one I can think of that force
power wielder. That was a trivia question that I was on a trivia night one time at a bar a long time ago, and they asked that question, and I got it right. So I was like, I always thought that was a fun nugget of trivia there. So they survive the night, and that whole intro scene is done. And like I said, it was all written just to explain the facial scars. Um, at the same time, the Empire is actually they have not has not cut back to the Empire yet. I take that back. So we see Luke get saved. We see our first airspeeder come fly over them and say they found him. That guy takes all the credit, even though Han actually saved Luke. That guy's like, I found him. I found him. And they head back and they stick Luke in a Bacta tank, and we get to see some Star Wars medicine. So when you think about the whole Bacta tank scenes, I didn't even know what those were until I played Battlefront 2.
Yeah, I don't. I think that was. Uh, I feel like there was supposed to be more to that than I mean, because they didn't really explain what.
And magic water.
Yeah, I mean, um, I don't know. I mean, I really honestly forgot about that part.
Yeah.
'Cause it's just so.
It's such a
Yeah,
non-important thing. But it leads up to a very important part, and that is the infamous kiss, which comes up next.
Incestuous.
The incestuous kiss. So as they are reuniting with now awake Luke Skywalker, Han's giving him a hard time, saying he owes him two now, and he's flirting with Leia again, and Leia's getting kind of fed up with it. So to show him, she plants one on not knowing it's her brother Luke. So this is the first big plot hole, I guess, and one of the frequently pointed out plot holes in Star Wars that they totally kiss.
All I can think of is that Euro trip. You kissed your sister, dude.
so
Now, after when you're a kid, you don't really think about it, but rewatching them as an adult, it's like a cringe moment because you're just like,
yep. Knowing how it ends, you're like, and he's so proud of it. He like kicks back. He's like, yeah. That's the scary part is his reaction to it.
Maybe that's how they, keep the force in the family.
Yeah, they should have. I wonder if did they ever do it on the Family Guy? Did they ever mention? I thought they do make a joke about like finding out that like when he finds out that Leia's his sister, he's like, "Oh, I kissed her." Or something. Someone makes a joke about it.
Yeah, I remember something about. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but I remember them mentioning it.
I mean, it's impossible not to mention once you once you see it because it's like I said, it kind of leaves a pretty big plot hole in Star Wars there. Not detrimental to the story, but
it's like
just,
it's never mentioned again either.
Yeah, they never bring it up.
There's Han's not going. Well, at least I didn't kiss my sister.
Yeah. Oh gosh, and he would do that in real life. Any real bro would would definitely be bringing that up. Or even on the opposite side, like because now that you know that Han's banging your sister, he'd be like, why you bragging? I kissed her too. He'd be like, oh. So now we get the scene where we cut back to the Empire and they're listening in on their probe droids. And the admiral's about to just let it go and say, "Yeah, that's nothing. There's life forms, whatever. There's life forms everywhere." And Vader walks up and says, "No, shut up. That's where they're at. We're gonna go." So they find the shield generators.
One of the books said they sent out 100,000
probe
droids around the universe.
Wonder if they ever pick them back up
around the galaxy and just. I don't know, but I would have liked to see that in the beginning, just seeing all of them.
The planets, so where they go.
Kind of all just spreading out.
Yeah.
And going through. That would have been a cool intro.
I would like to see a montage of just the different planets they're on. Just like
I can't remember which book it was, but I remember reading that there was over 100,000 of them that were sent out that morning to.
That's.
Well, yeah.
Guess if you got it, use it.
Yeah.
I mean, our military spends lots of money for little results. That's kind of the story of defense budgets. All right, so they find the planet, and Vader tells General Veers to prepare his men for a land assault. Because obviously that's a shield generator that they found, so they're not going to be able to just blast this rebel base from space. So we get to see our first real big land battle in Star Wars, and this is always probably the coolest part of the movie to me. I've said this on the podcast before, but Empire feels like it lasts a really long time. Like when I was younger, it felt like it was a slow burn movie. Like everything.
Well, even the Battle of Hoth. I mean, it in my mind that played on for an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like really long.
Yeah, this whole movie feels so much more substantial than its runtime, which is it's like the third shortest movie in the entire Star Wars canon.
Yeah, but I mean, does it really feel? I mean, because it's just it brings you in to the story. You feel like you're just
Hmm.
immersed in it. So it goes by so quickly, but at the same time, you're just
Get more of it.
yeah. I mean, just like any real battle situation, it feels like it lasts forever.
Yeah, it's a definitely a filling movie. I'll call it.
Yeah.
But I really did try to pay attention when I watched it this time, and I could tell how fast it went by. I was like, okay, yeah, this movie's not that long, but it just seems like there's so
They
much
make
going
good use
on.
of their time. They cut out. I mean, if you watch the director's cut, they released versus the original theatrical release. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that wasn't detrimental to the story that they cut out.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of filler. I mean, that's good they cut it out because you're not sitting here going, they're not mansplaining parts of the movie.
yeah, but it definitely feels like the dialogue, all the dialogue's meaningful, and
Yeah.
it's well delivered also.
Yep.
So every line has like some weight and importance to it. So yeah, we get the Battle of Hoth, and the Battle of Hoth is cool. I always feel funny because whenever I examine sci-fi war, you think like the technology's so advanced, therefore tactics would be so advanced. Like I've made my like qualms about how the space battles. That's not how space battles will work because in zero gravity, you literally like the best starship would be a cube
Mhm.
because it would literally just be able to travel any direction on an XYZ axis at any time, and starfights would literally be like it looked like a game of Pong.
Right.
It's not- so like having wings and foils and things like that, and you're not, yeah, the naval battles wouldn't quite work that way. But with the land battle, I find it even more interesting because I tried to like look at their like defense, like their trench system and their defenses that Hoth is set up like outside. I was trying to compare it to like real life tactics and trying to place like
Well, it
what
pulls from like World War II tactics.
that's
I
what,
mean,
yeah, and that's what I was saying. I was trying to place it in a time period. I'm like, what does this look like most to me? And that's what I got was a feel of almost like that, like you said, more like a World War II more than like a World War One trench thing. But like
Yeah.
World War II, it's got more fast moving. You've got air support, and then obviously our heavy armor is what the Empire is going to use. We finally see the AT-ATs and then the AT-STs as support. So it's actually
it'd be equivalent to like their tank. I mean,
Yeah.
tanks rolling through, and then you've got your your fighter jets.
hmm
What was the Avengers? You remember that really old movie where they wrapped the legs? Remember?
Oh, yeah.
He was talking about Star Wars. I
in
mean, that's-
Civil War when Spider-Man talks about it. Yeah,
It's like you remember that really old movie where they. I mean that I think that's one of the biggest impacts of that movie that was left is whenever they wrapped the legs
hmm
and then it fell. I mean that made that whole there wasn't any slowing down of the action sequence. I think that's why I felt like it went on forever is because it was just constant.
hmm
I mean barraging of and the again with the AT-ATs and stuff, it felt like you said, like a World War II setting. Like there was a base. They had their trench warfare going on. I mean, did they have did any of the troopers make it on foot, or was it all AT-AT? And
you never. I don't think you see Imperial troops on the ground.
I know in the games,
In the
it's
games, yeah.
yeah. But I don't remember seeing any troops on the ground.
Not until they storm the base. You don't see any of them, and you get to see a good variety there because you get to see some of the stormtroopers with, like the heavy machine gun. Like
Yeah,
I guess it would be
always.
equivalent of a light machine gun, but you see troopers carrying like the bandolier and like the backpack, and then carrying like an actual light machine gun kind of thing. You get to see some variation, and I thought that was kind of cool. It gave it some variety of not just troops with the same blaster like walking in. You get to see the Hoth gear too. They've changed to like a winter helmet with like the neck
Yeah.
gaiter and everything. I thought that was a really cool change up. But the whole battle, yeah, is exciting. I do want to point out that in the special edition, there are differences. I've always pointed out that we are talking about the movie as it is complete, the final Disney-fied canon movie. So this does have special edition additions to it, I guess. In the original version of the movie, you can actually see through the legs of the or you can see through the cockpit of the speeder, and you can still see the legs of the AT-AT as they go by. And in the special edition, they went back in and like filled that in so that you now don't see, it's not transparent.
Right.
So I thought that was like one of the cool additions. I mean, I think that's worth it. It's not changing the plot, but it's actually a good graphical change.
What in the hell?
So what did you do?
You ripped my charger out of the wall. Oh, I saved this. It said that during the filming of the Battle of Hoth, the Echo Base troops are actually Norwegian mountain rescue skiers. In exchange for participation in the film, Lucasfilm made a donation to the Norwegian Red Cross.
Nice.
So the ones inside Echo Base.
The authentic, the ones that I guess are flanking him on the side and setting up that gun in the hallway for some reason. That seemed like a good idea. I don't know why.
And I did see that they Echo Base was actually named because the whoever was in charge of the rebel actually the way it was that is because before they moved in the equipment and they made it a base, that he went in there and heard his echo
Yeah.
because it was so hollowed out. So it became Echo Base. It wasn't really original that day, but
Yeah. And as much as I hate snow, this is really one of the cooler set pieces in the entire original trilogy. I think.
yeah.
I really like this whole. I just like the whole planet. Honestly, it's kind of cool. But moving on. So obviously, as the rebels are fleeing the base, they're fleeing on transports with X-wings. Vader and his, I guess, General Veers' attack force take Echo Base just in time to see Han and Leia, C-3PO, and Chewbacca escape on the Millennium Falcon, while Luke Skywalker and R2-D2 are going to Dagobah to meet with Yoda, which I should have said the reason he's going there is because he saw a vision of Ghost Obi-Wan Kenobi tell him to go find Yoda on Dagobah to learn from him. So Luke is headed to Dagobah, where we see him crash land on the swampy planet, and he's just going to be chilling there for a while. This is where the movie starts diverging, where we get our big set pieces. So while that's happening, Han and crew are fleeing the Empire, who they are now being chased by because they can't go into hyperdrive, or they can't go into light speed because hyperdrive's not working, which I do find this humor actually funny that C-3PO is trying to warn them the whole time, and Han just keeps telling him to shut up and ignores him. So it's the classic, well, why didn't you speak up earlier kind of thing. And they eventually will fly into an asteroid field to try to escape the Empire and will dive into a hole in an asteroid. And you can pick it up from there. Do you remember what's in there?
Shoe and a potato.
Yeah, kind of. It looks like a potato.
It is a potato.
Is that, that's what they used for the...
Yeah, that's one of the other things I say. But I said that the originally the asteroid scene, one of the asteroids was actually a shoe. Asked the special effects people to redo the scene so many times that they got annoyed, and one of them threw in their shoe. Later, remastered visions of said to corrected this. Another asteroid is actually made of a potato. It appears just as the Millennium Falcon enters the field. Two asteroids travel from the left to the bottom right corner of the screen. Just after the second asteroid leaves the screen, a third one appears in the top left. It's a potato. You're gonna have to rewatch that scene now so you can see the shoe and the potato. If you can get the one before they remastered.
So once again, creativity. When
I like that they just got so annoyed they just tossed the shoe in.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Screw this. I'm tired of it.
No one
I want to go
noticed.
home.
We weren't even recording when we were talking about special effects earlier, but we were actually talking before we started recording about how fun it would have been to be basically a prop master and during that time on a shoestring budget kind of thing because
Shoestring.
shoestring. Because we were talking about the camera, the lightsaber hilt for Luke's lightsaber,
the Graflex camera, the handle
for the flash. So.
Well, I mean, just going in. I mean, even in the bottom of Luke's lightsaber when it's buried in the snow, you can see the manufacturer's name etched in the bottom of the lightsaber hilt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the stuff that you think is, they built all these set pieces and everything just to find out that they're just ordinary stuff you could find around the house.
Yep. The famous
it's imagination,
the famous communicators in the Phantom Menace are Gillette razors.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I love seeing that stuff. Like it's just, in the 70s and 80s, their view of the future technologies and stuff. I mean, they used to think that 2000 was going to be this great space,
Mm-hmm.
and even with Alien, it takes place in 2037. I think the first one was.
Yeah,
I mean, we're not even anywhere close to having that level of space travel. But seeing that, and then even every sci-fi show after that, like we were talking about The Expanse, it's their communicators are basically these little plexiglass things that they digitally add in a screen on. I mean, it's just the props they come up with. I mean, now that you can basically turn anything into anything. I mean, you just got to have some creativity.
We
Star
didn't,
Wars did it best, though.
and Garrett and I didn't bring this up in Return at all, and I'll probably bring it up more when I cover A New Hope. But the guns too that are used in Star Wars, a lot of those are real milsurp guns
Yep.
that they've just put cones on, like Han Solo's blaster is a C96 Mauser.
Yep.
The Jawa's little electric shotgun thing is actually a Lee Enfield that's been completely cut down, which is super illegal. but I don't think they cared.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I always find that fascinating how many guns, and I like how in the Star Wars, the updated Battlefront games, I'll say updated, the newer ones, the most recent Battlefront games, how they actually, you can still see they kept that. Like when you get that shotgun, it
yeah,
still
yeah.
looks like a Lee Enfield.
They didn't change. Like even with it amazed me that the original release, if it was 4, 5, and 6, they came out with all these props that looked what they feel would be in the universe. And then when they went back and in the 2000s and they filmed 1, 2, and 3, they kind of kept
The charm.
they had the technology, they had the to make it look more futuristic, more sci-fi, but they kept that same because your episode 1, 2, and 3 would have obviously came before the original trilogy. So if anything, you had to dumb it down to what it had, because 4, 5, and 6 would have been advanced technology compared to 1, 2, and 3. So they had to, all that has to be taken into consideration, and the prop masters and just the people who do that stuff are just, they've got a lot of work.
And along with the charm of it all, I think it's become like not necessarily an in joke, but like an accepted, like if you're a fan, it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of accept it as like, yeah, that's just part of the universe. So moving on, they find out that while they're inside this asteroid, that they are actually inside an asteroid worm of some sort. I don't know what this creature's called, but
It's got a name. I just can't remember.
I know that's the Minox that are living inside it, right? The bat things that suck onto the... Zelda, get down. I have to edit you out of everything. Come on. But
it was like some slug. It was considered a slug, I believe.
Yeah, it definitely looks like some kind of worm with teeth. So, but it blows their cover, so the Millennium Falcon has to flee, and then the Empire's back on the chase. And so now we get Han's gambit to finally get away from the Empire, and that's he turns around and flies straight towards them, and the Empire thinks that they have disappeared or gone into light speed or something like that, but what they've really done is just magnetize themselves to the Star Destroyer itself, and they're just hanging out until the Star Destroyer jettisons its garbage, and then they release and just float away. And they think they've gotten away, but then we see the Slave One for the first time, and Boba Fett in pursuit. And then we cut back to Dagobah. So now Luke meets Yoda, who Yoda plays dumb, kind of tries to play like he's kind of an aloof character at first, and then finally reveals that he is Yoda and that he doesn't believe that Luke is able to be trained at this point. Says he's too old, which is another kind of weird plot hole because we see a lot of characters later on that are written that are obviously trained when they're way older to be Force users. So another...
Well, I think that Yoda's also, I mean, coming in from, the Jedi, they're when he goes in and slays all the children, at that time, Yoda's used to, from birth, they're being raised all the way up. So in his mind, maybe he's just like, you're too old. And then, see if Luke's going to be like, okay.
Yeah.
Or if he's going to accept it and move on, or he's going to,
Because it's never really said that if you're too old, does that mean your mind's not open enough to understand? Or does it mean that you are more susceptible to fall to the dark side or abuse the power? Or rush it and try to use it before
maybe
you're ready?
Because when you get older, your life experiences, good or bad, will weigh on what side you
tainted.
fall on. Yeah. Like if you were, as an orphan, if you grew up in an abusive household, you may, once you start developing Force, you may veer towards the dark side.
Yeah, more anger in you. Yeah. It could be that. Also, I think there's also like the impetuousness of it. Like I think as an adult, kids obviously want things now, but at the same time, I think adults are more guilty of, okay, show me what I need to know. Cool, I got this. I'm going to go do it now. It's like a kid wanting to learn how to drive a car.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, this is the gas, that's the brake. Okay, I think I got this. Let me go. And you don't just give a kid a car like that.
Hmm.
So I think
Exactly.
I think that's more maybe part of it too, is that if you show someone they're not gonna learn everything to be a responsible user of what they are learning. So maybe
Yeah.
that's part of it.
Probably.
So we see Luke doing handstands and doing flips, running around with Yoda on his back, and we basically see his whole Rocky training montage while he learns some wisdom about the Force, and we finally get some explanation of like what the Force is. Like Yoda kind of explains it, saying like it's an all binding energy that is in everything in the universe,
Hmm.
and it's the first. I don't want to say it's the first. I say we get some of that from Obi-Wan in A New Hope, but this really kind of sets down more of the canon of like I guess what people really take today to be like the actual religion of like Jedi, because like there's people that really follow that whole kind of like there's a binding force in the universe. I guess a modern day animism kind of thing of
Yeah.
all. So, I don't know, but
Well, I mean, wouldn't that fall? Wouldn't in the Star Wars universe, wouldn't being a Jedi fall into some religious? I mean, it's it's basically a cult. I
yeah,
mean, if you think about the in a whole.
yeah.
I mean,
I mean, yeah. It's probably how it is viewed, and we have brought this up on the podcast before. I think Kat actually brought it up how there's so many people in the galaxy that aren't Force believers or Force wielders, and or even the ones like we mentioned in Rogue One, how you have like the people who've fallen away from it who don't really like. How I described it was like, oh, you believe in God, you're just not on speaking terms, like that kind of thing. Because you have the old Jedi Temple guard who's like in Rogue One, who's just kind of like, the Force never did anything for me, and it's like I believe in it, but it's not helped me out any. And there's probably we tend to forget because the Skywalker saga focuses on a family of Jedi and their friends that are all Force wielders and enemies that are Force wielders. But there's probably, I mean, what do you think? 1% of people actually are like Force wielders?
yeah, if that, I mean, it's well, you saw in the Solo movie, there wasn't that big of an emphasis on the Force.
Hmm.
I mean, that just go if you look at that movie, before he even met Luke, and they barely mention
Hmm.
Force in there. I mean, it's not a big part of their world unless it affects you.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, yeah, ordinary life on a different in a different planet with all the people who live in the streets, and I mean they it's something you hear about, but it's not something that you see on a daily basis. So it's I mean it's got to be, I mean, like you said, 1% or less. I mean it's because they're supposed to be the last ones after they were
Hmm.
pushed into hiding. So even
Even fewer.
even with the newer movies, there would be even fewer. It'd be
Yeah.
a percentage of a percent.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, yeah, it makes sense that you have Imperial like admirals and generals literally telling Vader to his face that they don't believe his hokey religion.
I mean, did you play the new game? What is it? Jedi.
Fallen Order.
Yeah. I mean, he was in hiding as one of the last Jedi
Hmm.
until he used his abilities, and then he was tracked down. But I mean, in that world, that it wasn't a big unless you had it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so I think that it's it's a lot like it's there, but if it doesn't directly affect you, you're not going to give it two thoughts.
Yeah.
Like if I'm walking down the street and I see someone use the Force for something, I'm like, oh, okay, cool, it does exist,
Hmm.
or teach me.
Yeah.
But if the mass majority of the universe doesn't affect.
Yeah. Yeah. So they just don't care about the mysticism of it at all.
Yeah, I mean they. I want to see what I want to see is a gray Jedi
Hmm.
in the movie. I mean, I want to see that balance. Um, I think if they did a movie that was more based on people who in the Star Wars universe that have nothing to do with the Force. I mean, with Rogue One, it was nothing. I mean,
It's mentioned that we know it because like I said, you have people that were former, like the temple. They weren't Jedi, but they were like worked in the temple and everything.
yeah,
But there's no outright Force users other than Vader in that movie.
you're right. And anytime that they mention any Force wielding people, it's always the same group that we see.
Hmm.
With Yoda or Darth Vader, or Luke. all this. It's always the same people that they mention.
Hmm.
So it makes me think that it may have been big at one time, but now it's just it's kind of like how uh, Greek mythology used to be religion,
Hmm.
and then over centuries, it's kind of
Now it's just interesting stories
right.
and
So,
literature.
and that's what if you look at newer Star Wars movies, that people who aren't Force building, they see it as the Jedi mythology.
Hmm.
It's like, I mean, it used to, that's what they used to think is real, and after so long, it becomes
Yeah. And then planets where it's outright encouraged, like Dathomir, are planets that are avoided
right.
because they're hostile, violent planets.
Yeah,
So, like, if anyone that went there, everyone's, I mean, not everyone, but the ruling class on Dathomir are force wielders, but no one wants to go there because they're also more willing to execute you, or you're going to die by wildlife.
right.
So,
Yeah.
all right, moving on the plot. So we
Well, we got to talk about how they almost named Yoda Mitch.
I don't think I ever heard that.
Yeah, I remember I had to write it down whenever I was watching the thing, but it was an early draft of the film. Luke was going to travel to the planet of Bog instead of Dagobah, and receive training from a frog-like Jedi named Minch. In later drafts, they changed it to Yoda. He was going to be named Minch.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah,
And Bog is also very on the nose. What do you want to call the swamp planet?
Bog. It's just a bog.
Yeah, they were really phoning that one in.
And that one was, I think Dagobah had to been annoying to film though, because they had to build the stage up high for the people that work Yoda, and then I think they said that Mark Hamill hit his head like 20 times going in and out of the hut, and and that was before Lucas was satisfied.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was. Could you imagine being under there having to walk
That'd be a pain.
Yeah.
More than I'd be willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we see Han and company go to the planet Bespin, more particularly Cloud City,
right?
Where he is going to meet up with his old friend named Lando Calrissian, who is an old gambler who has basically won governorship or whatever over Cloud City, which is
that is the first time he sees Lando since the Solo movie.
I know it's kind of crazy
because they kind of reference. I mean, I'm glad they put that in. What did you do to my ship?
Yeah.
Because it used to be clean and immaculate.
And it is fun to see more of Han's backstory. Mm-hmm. Now, by meeting Lando, you're kind of getting a glimpse into who Han was before,
right?
And which we didn't really get until you get into novels and stuff like that. But it's cool to see that he has old friends and they're kind of shady of the same character that he is. And
that was part of that pulling him. That wasn't part of the Jedi world.
Yeah,
and that he was a smuggler. I mean, he had a life before he met Luke and Leia.
So Lando seems to have been a once gambler gone legit now, as he has this carbon mining colony above Bespin. And while they're there, he obviously puts the moves. Billy D. Williams was smooth, cool as the other side of the pillow. He puts the moves on Leia a little bit, and Han's like, yeah, not too close there, kiddo.
That's the real reason he got caught.
Yeah.
He's like, get away. You know what? You want to let me have her? You know what? Come get him.
Yeah, that's true. But no, apparently Vader and his cronies have landed there before Han was able to get there. Which, how did they know to go there?
Force.
Yeah, maybe. Or
he detected.
Maybe they already had dealings with Lando and they knew he had a past with Han. I don't really know.
Well, because they didn't.
Or, well, actually, Boba Fett would have tipped him off. I just thought about that.
And Boba Fett did follow him there.
Yeah, and he's more of the investigative type. So he probably followed him there, tipped him off, and they were in the area.
Yeah.
Either way, Vader's there and gets the drop on him. And so now the plan is revealed that they are using Han, Leia, and Chewbacca as bait to get Luke to come to Cloud City to face off with Vader, and Vader's plan is to capture him and take him to the Emperor. Which, it's funny because they don't mention, in return, they explicitly say the plan is to turn Luke Skywalker.
Right.
But he has not discussed that with Palpatine, as far as we know yet, because he does it in return.
Right.
So Vader's already planning on taking Luke. He says he's taking Luke as the Emperor's prize. But he's actually made no mention
A lot
up
of
to this
that,
point.
a lot of that too he hasn't revealed the whole father son thing at that point. So it's not like he's going to say, I want my son to come with me to,
Yeah.
he can't really mention that. So they've got to find a way in the movie to explain why they're trying to get him.
True. Also,
'cause-
Vader might be just name dropping. He might not have any real intention of taking him to the Emperor because obviously it's a Sith's duty to overthrow his master. So he might have wanted Luke for himself and everything, but he's just throwing the Emperor's prize around to intimidate Lando.
Well, I don't know, because remember when he's trapped and when he cut his hand off, and he's like, "Come with me, and we can rule the galaxy as father and son." So I think at that point it shows that he wants him to join him, and maybe they're gonna overthrow Palpatine.
Yeah, I think that's his plan at that point. And
yeah,
I think
the two of them together would be strong enough to take Palpatine.
Yeah.
So.
And especially if he finished his training. So
Right.
because as we'll see, I won't spoil it yet, but
Man, it's been out long enough
yeah,
now. that
not really
there's no
spoiling.
spoiling.
Not about the father son, but that Luke basically is not. Vader tells him to his face, "You're not a Jedi yet." So I guess his plan was to finish his training. But as we see, first Han will be.
Can you do a spoiler alert for a movie that's over 30 years
Nah, I
old?
guess not. I just meant a spoiler for this podcast.
Yeah.
But
You need to put a disclaimer in
Disclaimer.
if you haven't seen Star Wars at all, go to a different podcast.
This movie will be 41 years old this year. Spoiler alert. I actually, I accidentally spoiled The Usual Suspects for somebody the other day. Like this, I said the other day. This was actually like 2 years ago. But it was funny. They were talking about something, and I said something about Kaiser Soze, and like I basically spoiled the ending of Usual Suspects. And the guy's like, "I've never seen that," and I was like, "I'm not apologizing for a 30-year-old spoiler."
No, I mean, even with the movies that come out in theaters today, you get like 2 weeks.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, that's the grace period, 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, I'm lucky if I can scroll through Facebook and not get a spoiler.
You can't.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot get on like when the new Star Wars movie came out, I couldn't get to it right
Yep.
away. So you have to stay off of social media because there's always going to be that one dick.
Yep. It was like that for me every week with Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially
usually-
with TV shows. I mean,
Yeah.
you get. I mean, granted, that's why I said 2 weeks because they even came out with when the new when Infinity War came out, the directors came out and it was like the grace period's about 2 weeks because not everybody can get their opening day. People have to work, kids. So about 2 weeks or so before they start posting, stuff, behind the scenes and this and that. And I mean, but really, if it's something large like that, I mean, it's if someone comes and says, "Oh man, I haven't seen the first Avengers movie," don't spoil it. I mean, it's been out. At this point, it's like with Star Wars.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Star Wars. Don't spoil it. I mean,
Yeah. It's up.
that's on you, buddy. I mean, everybody else in the world has seen it.
Yep.
Even if you don't like it or know what it is, at some point you saw enough to know when people are talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when Mandalorian was out. Like I knew I was gonna get some stuff spoiled for me, but it was like I had coworkers watching it in the break room, like on their phones and stuff during lunch, and I was just like, oh, I gotta leave this room because I don't want to see this yet.
Yeah. So spoiler. If you haven't seen Mandalorian, skip ahead.
Yeah.
But you watched both seasons, right?
I did.
So what did you think with the big ending? Whenever he landed, you knew it was coming, right?
I knew it was coming, and the way I described it, actually when I was watching it, I was just
like, that looks familiar.
It also to me was the light side version of the Rogue One ending.
Exactly.
That's
he
why
came in with the hood up,
yeah,
tearing people up.
knew exactly what was going to happen.
And then I liked at the end, and he's like, "You're not taking him," and he's like, "It's like he just tore through a ship full of people, and you're gonna tell him he's not gonna do something."
Yeah.
It's like you might want to step aside.
Yeah. Basically, you've talked to Ahsoka Tano, and she's like, she didn't outright say it was going to be him that finds him.
Yeah.
But she basically said, no, someone who could teach him better than I can will find him. And,
And obviously her master's not available.
Yeah. So I do find that funny that if she was saying I'm not the right one to train him, she's basically kind of telling you that means there's people out there better than me at what I'm doing, and you've already fought against her and basically had to say time out, time out.
No, Rosario Dawson. You think that was a good pick?
Yeah, I like her as an actress. I really do. I'm so used to seeing animated Ahsoka though.
Yeah.
And Rosario Dawson has very sharp features. Like her cheekbones are very high. She's got like the very kind of angular jaw, like kind of thing. And I'm so used to seeing a more rounded face Ahsoka that I didn't know how it's going to look. I mean, overall, I'm pleased with it because
I think she played the part well.
yeah,
I mean, did you? I mean, the intro, not the intro, but when they introduced Ahsoka
hmm
in the Mandalorian. I mean, when it's dark, you just see these two lightsabers. I mean,
Yeah.
you know exactly what's
oh,
going on.
it was awesome.
Yeah.
I was definitely.
It was like, oh yeah, you know where this is going.
But it is but yeah, I mean, I'm pleased with the performance. It's just that she didn't. I would not have thought of her to be the look of adult Ahsoka.
Right.
I guess that's the best way to describe it. Anyway, back to our plot. So we're trying to wind it down here. Luke comes to Bespin to face off against Vader and save now frozen in carbonite Han. So the plan apparently is to get Luke to get frozen in the carbonite so that Vader can transport him.
Right.
But they test it on Han first. So this is how we get classic Han frozen in carbonite, and we get one of the most famous lines in the Star Wars universe, which is the "I love you, I know," which was Harrison Ford's ad-libbed line.
Yeah.
So he actually did that. He thought it was out of character for him to say "I love you too." So,
Yep.
which it's a badass line. So,
Like I know.
yeah, he's like, "Yep, been telling you that the whole movie."
Yeah.
And so now, Lando tells Leia and Chewbacca that the whole time he's been trying to plan the right moment to basically get out of this bad deal with Vader. So they, with the help of Lobot, Lobot saving the day, they overthrow the stormtroopers that are around them, and now he has his guards trying to go back to take Cloud City, and they go to try to save Han that is being loaded onto the Slave One with Boba Fett. They are too late, and Boba Fett gets away with Han Solo, and they have to flee Cloud City on the Millennium Falcon. And while this is going on, we finally see the first decent lightsaber fight in the Star Wars movies, because the Obi-Wan Vader fight is not really anything. Yeah.
I mean, that was. I mean, for the time, it was. I don't. When you go and you compare, like Episode 4, the lightsaber duel between them two,
Mhm.
and then you go back and you see like Episode 2, Episode 3, and they're
Yeah.
bouncing all over the place. You can tell there's a difference in the special effects and what they were able to do at the time. But I mean, that one right there with Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fighting in the hangar bay,
hmm
that reminded me of two grandpas with canes.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just it looked like a geriatric cane fight.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
And then they stepped it up from there, you know, with Luke and Vader. And
We get to see some of the Force power, some of the flips
Exactly,
he's
yeah.
learned.
so that's one thing that never really tracked with me, because the fight between him and Obi-Wan was so slow, but then he was able to keep up with Luke. And it
And
was,
granted, in this lightsaber fight, Vader is holding back. He's just trying to see.
yeah, he's not trying to hurt his,
yeah, he's trying to see
spoiler alert, son.
what Luke has. Like he's testing him out a
Yeah.
little bit.
Of course.
So Luke doesn't get frozen in carbonite, and eventually they fight their way out onto the radio antenna thing, and then obviously Luke loses and he gets disarmed, literally. so he loses his lightsaber and he loses his hand, and now Vader drops the bombshell on him, which is the most important part of this movie, essentially canonically, that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. One of the most famous scenes in movie history, I would say, and a big shocker. They had to keep that secret.
Yeah, I mean, George Lucas, Kushner, and Hamill, the only three people who knew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody else on the cast knew. And the only reason they told Mark Hamill is so he would know how to react.
Yep. They did not. James Earl Jones was the other one that knew, and that's because when he read for the voiceover.
Yeah.
When they filmed that scene, David Prowse didn't even say the right line. They filmed it with the wrong line so that no one else would know. And then, like you said, Mark Hamill reacted. I guess it would have looked like an overreaction on set for what the original dialogue was, but he reacts accordingly. And then when James Earl Jones does the voiceover, he says the correct line: "That no, I am your father," and that's big bombshell.
That's the most misinterpreted line in cinema history, because everybody's like, "Luke, I am your father."
Mm-hmm.
That's not what he says.
Nope. It says, "No, I am your father."
It's like Obi-Wan killed your father.
So that after this, we see basically Luke refuse to join Vader, and he decides instead to just I don't know what his plan was, but he lets go and goes flying down this chute and ends up on the little radio antenna on the bottom of Cloud
I think he
City.
knew that they were there. They were there.
Or maybe
He had to
had
have.
enough force feelings to reach out and see that he'd be safe. I don't know, but he does that and he's hanging from the antenna and he reaches out with his feelings. And Leia, first time we ever see, it's not outright said that she's force sensitive. We don't know that
Yeah,
yet.
that's what I think. I think that's how you know that he was going to be all right because she knew exactly. She's like, she was tuned into him.
Yeah, she's like, we got to turn around.
Yeah.
But as far as the audience would have known at this time, that's just Luke being able to talk to her directly.
Yeah.
But then we come to find out
But
she's,
they cut away from that when she's like, we got to turn around,
mm-hmm.
and they cut away from the whole conversation she would have had. Like go here, stop here.
True,
Wait.
yeah.
So that could have been a big part of it. She could have been like, I'm sensing something.
I know
Luke's
exactly
telling me to come here.
Yeah.
That whole part was cut out, or you just have to kind of, that's what you think happened,
Mm-hmm.
and you never really know because they didn't really act that out. But from that instance of him falling and doing like he was speaking to her just to come here, like she heard that voice in her head saying, "Go here, wait here."
Mm-hmm.
Which I hope, or he was just trying to commit suicide and we just misinterpreted the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I just never knew. How did I end up on this radio tower? So the crew comes, picks him up, and then we finally we finish off the movie seeing him getting his new robotic arm, and they're standing on a medical cruiser and just staring out into space, waiting to see what happens next. So much like the title says, The Empire Strikes Back, this is a win for the dark side. It's how this movie kind of ends off. And it's pretty much a cliffhanger, knowing we're going to get another movie to finish this whole story off. We didn't know it was going to be only one movie because, like I said, the plan was to have 2 more movies. But it's a pretty good ending, knowing that this is leading into another movie. And that is the plot of Empire Strikes Back. So let's wind it down now. Of where do you think this movie stands as far as in the best Star Wars movies? If you were thinking of ranking them, where do you think this falls?
Of the original trilogy, or are we just
All
of them?
Yep.
Are we talking about TVs, everything, or just just cinematic?
Just the mainstream, the movies plus Rogue One and Solo.
I don't know. It's gonna have to be in the top 3 because it shows that with movies of that time, it always shows the heroes are victor.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those ones that show that the Empire is just as capable of defending themselves.
It is a legitimate war.
Yeah, exactly. And this was one of the, and they ended up, in episode 6, it ends up they destroy the Death Star. But it goes back and forth. It's like A New Hope introduces you to the characters. It shows you what their abilities are. It doesn't really give you a win-lose scenario. Mm-hmm. And then it automatically goes into the Empire's just kicks their ass. They're done. Mm-hmm. They're out, and then they come back. And it's just a good, that's why I say it has to be, I would probably put it in the top 2 because it shows them getting beat down. And it really opens the door for episode 6 because without that and them being beat down, and then he would have never had that strength because he was like, I can't do this. Mm-hmm. Even in the swamps and Dagobah, he was, I can't do that. And then having that beat down right there at the end, it kind of motivated him. Mm-hmm. And so I would say, the original trilogy in order are my favorite. I mean, they're my favorite 3 because it introduced the world to Star Wars and the characters. But so we would say I'm going to do it in the original order. I mean, just 1, 2, and 3.
That's
4, 5, and 6, because that opened the door. Without those, you wouldn't have any of the newer ones. I mean, they the prequels were planned way after, so they just had to backtrack from the original. So yeah, the original 3. So I guess Empire would be second.
Fair enough.
And the last 3 movies, Force Awakens, and those didn't exist. No, they're fine in their own right, but they I don't know. There's a lot of problems with
They've
them.
definitely got problems, and
it felt more like a Disney money grab.
Yeah.
Name dropping.
Or look at our new acquisition. What can we do with it? Let's
Right.
make something big and shiny and explosive. Like that's what the new ones feel like. They're so excited to have a new property that they just kind of.
I would have liked to see those three movies. They followed Ray, um, and her. Obviously, you've seen all of them, right?
Hmm.
So Palpatine. I would have liked to see them introduce some more characters, some new non-Force.
Yeah,
I mean, they had Finn, but
and Poe,
yeah, but
which he gets a lot of love, but
yeah, but I want to see a different. I want to move away from Palpatine and Vader, and I
yeah.
want to see a whole nother side.
I,
Let's see.
I think that's a routine argument of a lot of people is they're sick of the Skywalkers in general.
Exactly. They act like they're the only ones through Star Wars history to have force powers.
Yeah.
And when you look at how old Yoda is, that's not the case. You can see there were hundreds of
Oh yeah.
years, and there's other people to pull from. I mean, you could have brought any number of those ancestors, passed down. I don't know.
I mean, they could have told old stories. Like
That's why I said I think it was a cash grab using name drop.
Yeah.
It was using the Skywalker name. Because
Mhm.
that was the big popular name of Star Wars. I mean, that's Skywalker from Star Wars.
Also, I think knowing that George Lucas planned on doing a 7, 8, 9 and never got around to it, I think maybe they were like, it's a softball kind of thing. It's like, this is easy. We
Yeah.
can do 7, 8, 9. It's already kind of done.
And how long do you think before they go in and start doing more?
Yeah.
I mean, where they figure out somebody else had an illegitimate grandchild and they continue it on, or they like Kylo didn't get the love that he should have got.
Yeah. Very. Him compared to the now called Legends books, the actual kids of Leia and Han, which is what Jaina and Jason Solo, and
Right.
and yeah, and then what's is it Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker's kid is Ben Skywalker? Yeah, that's it. Jaina and Jason Solo are much more interesting characters than Kylo Ren, and
Right.
that's the unfortunate part because they had so much they could have took from that was already kind of like I said they had a skeleton there that they could have used and they didn't. They chose not to. One of the most important scenes in those movies is actually the death of Chewbacca. They opted out of that to give Harrison Ford his uh, much wanted, much begged for character arc of Han dying.
Right.
So there's a lot of things in those movies that I don't know. We'll get to them when we get to them, and I will be tackling the first one of those actually next week. We'll be doing The Last Jedi, so that's going to be Garrett will be back, and we'll be ripping into that movie, I'm sure.
Well, did you play the like one of the Force Unleashed
Mhm.
games? And his name was Star Killer.
Star Killer, yeah.
Did they have any influence on the Star Killer base? Did they ever?
So I think they thought they were using Starkiller Base as an homage, obviously to Luke's original name, which was supposed to be Luke Starkiller.
Yeah.
And then they thought that was too violent, so they made him Skywalker. But since they just kind of ignored all the things they considered not to be canon, I guess that's what they just decided to do. They're just like, oh, Starkiller Base, it'll be an homage. And I'm sure someone said, they already used that name. And they're like, yeah, but that doesn't exist in our world. So
Yeah. You know what I would have liked to see instead of a Ray? I would like to see Revan.
yeah, that's what I said is they could have took KOTOR and made it into a movie and I'd have been happier.
Yeah, that branch. They're willing to, do other storylines because they did Solo, they did Rogue One. They all tie in.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, okay, the original 9, you're done. Skywalker saga is over. Bring in, now you can do, Revan and the KOTOR. There's so many options out there that are canon you could bring into it from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that, like I said, that was just like you said. They had originally had it, so they were like, "This is going to be easy. We'll just write out, an ending to this."
I mean, there's so much they could have done, even from like video games. They could, KOTOR being one, but Rogue Squadron, you could have done that. They could have done Dark Forces, any of the stuff with Kyle Katarn. Like, there's so many characters and stories they could have.
There were so many Jedi that survived Order 66 that were just spread out.
We've still not got a canon Shakti story because she keeps getting cut out of every movie, and then the video game appearances they say are no longer canon.
Shocker.
So shocker. So I'll wind it up here by saying that when I came into this, I would have told anyone who asked me before I started this series that Empire was probably my favorite Star Wars movie. Since I've started talking about them in depth with different guests, I've come to realize that while I still think Empire is probably maybe the best written and the best shot and directed movie, and has The score is hard to say because John Williams knocks it out of the park in all these movies.
The score is amazing in all of them, though. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really really hard.
Yeah.
And have you checked out the Behind the Soundtrack podcast?
No.
I can't remember who runs it, but there's a Behind the Soundtrack podcast. Look it up, and they go into different soundtracks of all these movies, and there's so much to learn about the score and Star Wars movies that you just never knew.
Yeah. John Williams is. I mean, he's the best living composer. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
So you can't really judge this movie based on score compared to any others. But I do think this is probably the best written and best shot Star Wars movie. But the more I've talked about it, the more I'm realizing I don't think it really is my favorite. And I think that is because, kind of similar to what you said, I think as a standalone movie, it just doesn't, it exists in the vacuum between Return and New Hope.
Yeah, without 4 and 6,
It's
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's just not a standalone
Right.
great movie. It
But
exists.
see, the original Star Wars Episode 4 was, it could have been a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would have sucked to end where it ended,
Yeah,
but it could have
it
stood
could have.
alone.
Yeah, I mean, if it had bombed, they probably wouldn't have done anything with it.
Right.
That's the whole point of it being a wrapped up start to finish movie. I think that's how a lot of movies go. They have a plan in case it bombs, and if it doesn't, then they can make sequels. But like I said, having talked about it now, I think I just can't say it's my favorite movie because as a standalone, it doesn't work.
Right.
I can still watch Return of the Jedi as a standalone movie, and it wraps up nicely. I can watch A New Hope, and it wraps up nicely. The prequel trilogies, I can kind of appreciate for all their quirkiness and craziness. And while I don't think any one of them alone is better than Empire, I would have to say that Return and Rogue One are better standalone movies than Empire Strikes Back.
Well, Rogue One is a great standalone movie because it affects the overall story, but the last 30 seconds is when it actually ties into Episode 4.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, it doesn't tell you at the end what's going on. Obviously, they're just getting the plans for the Death Star, and they're trying. It tells you throughout the whole movie that's what their mission is.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, you could end Rogue One not ever seeing Episode 4 and knowing exactly what happened.
Yeah.
They got the plans. They got them to where they needed to go, and then that in your imagination that continued on. But yeah, Rogue One would be has nothing to do with the main story. It could have stood by itself.
Yep. I think I described it when we talked about it as a movie we didn't really need and doesn't do anything to change anything that happens in any of the other movies, but it is such a good action movie, such a good kind of a heist war movie all wrapped up into one, and then it has like the greatest final 5 minutes in cinematic history with the whole reveal of leading into A New Hope, basically.
Well, that played in, Rogue One took a lot of from War Tactics too. And, they were storming the beach when they were coming up the beach. That whole thing, that was like a Normandy, a nod to, World War II D-Day. I mean, that was them trying to get up,
bringing the war to Star Wars, like we said.
Yeah, exactly. And although it started out, Rogue One starts out kind of slow.
Mm-hmm.
And then going through it, though, being a fan of Star Wars, of all the movies, watching Rogue One, you're looking at all these new characters, and you're like, just sitting there like,
yeah, it's like, I don't want to get invested in this.
You're not going to get invested. None of these people survive.
Yeah.
There's no mention. There's no nothing. I mean, they're done. So, you know better than to get invested to their characters and their backstories. But, you do grow to like. I mean, you're just kind of mad that they died and that you didn't see them in the later movies.
Yeah.
But
it's the movie we didn't need, but we're glad we have.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up there. You can find us on Twitter at Hello Tangent Pod. You can find me at Rev Snakebite. You can find us on Instagram at Hello Tangent. You can find me at Reverend Michael Snakebite. All this is pretty obvious. You can find our Twitch channel, Hello_Tangent. Anywhere you want to promote?
Most places you're going to find me is Cubic One Studios on Twitter, Cubic One Studios on Instagram, and you can email me directly at cubic1studios@gmail.com.
Awesome.
It's all about game development. So if you have any questions,
hit him up. All right. Thank you for joining us again. Thank you, Dennis, for coming on today.
Yeah,
and Next week with part 6, we'll be tackling The Last Jedi, and that's going to be the first movie in the new
Do
trilogy.
you have a
that we're gonna
guest?
take. I do. It will be Garrett on that one, but I need someone still for Rise of Skywalker, and I need someone still for I can't remember if I need Revenge of the Sith and Solo.
I will be happy to come back for Solo if you want.
Solo it is. All right. We'll look forward to that. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks for listening. Bye.